The galaxy was wide, endless, and filled with countless empires. Among them, the Galactic Empire stood as the strongest. Its fleet stretched from one end of the stars to the other. Billions of soldiers wore its banners. Worlds obeyed without question. For thousands of years, no one had dared to resist. To the Empire, weakness was something to laugh at, and among the weak, humans stood at the bottom. Humans were not many. They lived on scattered colonies, small worlds that seemed unimportant. Other species called them dreamers, not fighters. They said humans were slow, fragile, and too few in number to ever matter. But one night, a whisper began to travel across the stars. A rumor, a story so strange that Imperial officers laughed at it. They called it nothing but lies. The rumor said, a human warship has entered Imperial space. It was a small thing to say. After all, what could one ship do? The Empire owned millions, and yet, the whisper carried something else with it. Fear. Entire fleets had gone silent on the edge of the border. Communications stopped without warning. No survivors reported back. Systems that once burned with the red glow of Imperial flags now showed only darkness. Admirals in the Empire dismissed it. Pirates, they said. Accidents. They laughed at the thought of a human ship destroying their vessels. But on the far edges of the galaxy, near the cold systems where no one dared to linger, the truth was quietly unfolding. The human ship appeared without fanfare. It did not roar into existence. It did not shout its name. It simply arrived. Like a shadow slipping through the stars, it drifted into Imperial territory. The ship was nothing like the sleek, shining cruisers of the Empire, where Imperial ships were covered in banners and bright metal. This one was silent, dark and sharp. Its armor was blackened, almost swallowing the light around it. Its design seemed older, heavier, built not for show but for war. Alien traders who caught sight of it by accident swore the ship did not move like normal vessels. They said it glided like a predator through the void, waiting, watching, patient. Inside that warship, only a few humans lived and breathed. Their faces carried no laughter, no joy, only quiet resolve. They did not talk loudly, nor did they brag. They whispered only one thing. One ship is enough. Far away, the Imperial Academy trained its cadets. Young soldiers laughed at the rumor. They practiced drills mocking the humans. A warship? From Earth? Impossible, they said. If it exists, we will crush it. Even their generals smiled at the thought. But one general, older than the rest, did not laugh. He had seen battles too many times. He knew the silence of fleets was no accident. And when he heard the report, he whispered only one word. Pray. No one listened to him. The first true encounter came quickly. An Imperial patrol of 3 cruisers picked up strange readings near a dead star. Their scanners showed something massive moving in the shadows. The captain smirked when the shape revealed itself. A single human warship, alone. Destroy it, he ordered, amused. The Imperial ships turned their weapons toward the human vessel. Energy cannons charged, missiles locked. There was no chance of defeat, not against one ship. They expected it to flee. They expected fear, but the human ship did not move. It simply waited. Then, without warning, the darkness lit up. The human vessel opened fire, and the stars burned bright with destruction. In seconds, the 3 cruisers were gone. Not damaged, not crippled, gone. The wreckage scattered across the void like dust in the wind. No survivors escaped to tell the story. Only the silence remained, yet somehow word still spread. A whisper here, a frightened voice there. Traders spoke of a storm of light that consumed ships in the blink of an eye. Others said the human ship carried weapons never seen before, weapons that tore through shields like they were paper. The Empire laughed again, but the laughter was thinner this time. The whispers refused to die, and the human ship kept moving. System by system, it slipped deeper into Imperial space, always silent, always watching, like death itself creeping closer with each hour. For the cadets in the academy, the story became a joke. The ghost ship, they called it. The coward's tale. They did not believe. But in the darkest chambers of the Imperial Palace, the Emperor sat in silence. Reports of missing fleets piled before him. Entire colonies had gone dark overnight. Billions of citizens vanished into shadows. And always, at the edge of every report, the same name appeared. Human warship sighted. The Emperor clenched his hand around the reports. And for the first time in centuries, Doubt touched his heart. Somewhere out in the void, a single human ship drifted closer, closer to the Empire, closer to the night that would shake the stars. The Galactic Empire had ruled the stars for thousands of years, believed itself eternal, unbreakable, untouchable. Its fleets outnumbered all others. Its soldiers filled entire worlds. To the Empire, nothing was impossible, except defeat. So when the first whispers of a human warship reached the throne, the halls of power laughed. Admirals smirked over wine. Senators shook their heads and called it low-born gossip. Even young cadets in training made jokes about the ghost ship. Humans, they said, are nothing more than dust beneath the boots of true empires. But the whispers did not stop. They grew. Each week another patrol went missing. Each day another system fell silent. Reports of wreckage drifted across the void. And yet, no survivors ever returned. The Empire's arrogance grew louder in response. They refused to admit fear. In the shining capital city of the Empire, beneath towers of steel and crystal, the Senate gathered. The Emperor sat high above them, hidden behind shadows and golden armor. His voice was calm, his presence heavy like a mountain. A nervous minister read out the newest reports. Entire fleets gone. Merchant convoys destroyed. Colonies silent. Enough, one senator snapped. These are pirates, or rebels. Nothing more, the chamber filled with laughter. Do you think a single human ship can destroy the might of the Empire? Another mocked. One vessel against millions? Their voices echoed with pride. Not one of them believed. But in the shadows near the throne, the old general stood. His eyes were dark, heavy with memory. He had seen real wars, not just training. He knew the look of fear when fleets stopped speaking. He knew silence was no accident. When the laughter ended, he spoke. His voice was low, almost a growl. You do not understand. This is not a rumor. This is not a story. Something is here. The chamber went still for a moment. The old man's words carried weight, but arrogance quickly rose again. Then tell us, General, one senator sneered. What is it, a ghost? A fairy tale? The general looked at the Emperor, his voice sharp and cold. No, it is human. And if we are not careful, we will all pray before this war is done. The senators burst out laughing once more. Humans? They shouted. The weakest species in the galaxy? We should be afraid of them? The Emperor raised a hand. Silence fell like a blade. His golden mask turned toward the general. Explain, the Emperor said. The general's jaw tightened. Every fleet we have sent has not returned. No wreckage, no survivors. Entire systems go dark when this ship arrives. It moves with precision. It kills with purpose. One ship, one shadow. And always the reports say the same. Human. The Emperor was silent. The senators fidgeted but did not dare speak. Finally, the Emperor's voice filled the hall. Send a fleet, he commanded. Not a patrol, not a handful of ships, a fleet. Show the galaxy what happens when you mock the Empire. The chamber roared in approval. The arrogance of the Empire had spoken. Across the stars, preparations began. A fleet of 30 Imperial warships was gathered. They were sleek, massive, armed with the most powerful weapons the Empire had ever built. Each ship was a fortress of steel and fire. Together, they had crushed rebellions, burned entire worlds, and silenced enemies. When the fleet left orbit, the skies of the capital glowed red with their thrusters. Billions of citizens cheered below. To them, this was entertainment, not war. A single human ship would be destroyed in seconds. Among the cheering crowds, whispers still spread. Fear, doubt, questions that no one dared say too loudly. What if the rumors are true? Out in the blackness of space, the human warship drifted silently. Its black armor reflected no light. It waited like a predator in the dark. The Imperial fleet arrived in a blaze of glory. 30 warships, banners waving, weapons ready. Their commanders laughed as they saw the lone human vessel on their scanners. There it is, one officer smirked. The Ghost, the admiral of the fleet, stood tall. His voice boomed through the comms. Human ship, you are trespassing in Imperial space. Surrender or be destroyed. The human ship did not answer. Silence, the admiral sneered. Very well, fire. Dozens of cannons lit the stars with fire. Beams of energy cut through the void. Missiles streaked forward, leaving trails of light. 30 warships unleashed their fury at once, and yet, when the light faded, the human ship was still there. Unharmed for the first time, the laughter of Imperial officers faded. "What? What is this?" One whispered. The human ship moved. Slowly, silently, it turned its dark hull toward the fleet. Then it struck. The void exploded with fire. Weapons no one had ever seen before tore through the Imperial shields as if they were paper. Beams of light brighter than suns ripped ships apart. In seconds, 2 cruisers were gone. Then 4 more. Then 6. The fleet screamed in panic. Orders shouted, alarms blared, but it was useless. The human ship moved with impossible speed. Every shot was perfect, every strike fatal. The admiral tried to rally his men. Stand and fight!" He roared. But his words died as his own ship was split in half by a single blast. In less than 5 minutes, the entire Imperial fleet was gone. 30 warships reduced to fire and dust. The human ship did not celebrate. It did not broadcast victory. It simply turned, silent as ever, and vanished into the void once more. Back in the capital, news of the fleet's destruction spread like wildfire. Senators went pale. Citizens trembled. For the first time in centuries, the Empire knew fear, but the Emperor sat still, unmoving. His voice was calm, almost cold. "So," he whispered, "the humans have teeth." His eyes burned behind the golden mask. "Then we will tear them out." Yet deep inside, even he felt the first edge of doubt. Because somewhere, out in the darkness, one human ship was still moving, and it was coming closer. The galaxy trembled. News of the destroyed fleet spread like fire across every system. 30 Imperial warships gone, erased by a single human vessel. At first, many thought it was a lie, a story told by rebels. But then the wreckage drifted into trade lanes. Broken hulls, silent distress beacons, floating banners of the Empire torn and burned. The truth could no longer be denied. A single human ship was at war with the Empire, and the Empire was losing. In the command chamber of the capital, the Emperor sat on his throne of black stone. The senators around him shouted over each other, their voices filled with panic. "We must send 100 ships," one cried. "No, 1,000. Another yelled. "We should build a trap," someone else insisted. The Emperor raised his hand and the chamber fell into silence. His golden mask glowed under the firelight. His voice was cold and steady. "You speak like frightened children. The Empire does not fear. The Empire does not run. If a human warship challenges us, then we will crush it." Slowly, the senators lowered their heads. None dared argue. But the general, the old man who had spoken before, stepped forward once again. His voice was deep, steady. "You do not understand, Majesty. This is not an ordinary ship. It moves like no vessel we have seen. It kills with precision. Every strike is planned. This is not random. This is war." The Emperor turned his mask toward him. "And what do you suggest, General?" The old soldier met his gaze without flinching. "Do not underestimate them. Do not mock them. If you want to win, you must know your enemy. You must study the human." The Emperor was silent. His golden fingers tapped the arm of his throne. Then he said, "Very well. We will not send more fleets to die. Not yet. Instead, we will watch. We will learn. And when the time comes, we will destroy them." Far from the capital, in the black silence of space, the human warship moved like a shadow. It was not built like other vessels. Its hull was smooth, dark, almost alive. Where Imperial ships glowed with lights and banners, this one vanished into the void, nearly invisible. Inside, the crew was silent and focused. No cheers followed their victories. No songs of triumph. Only discipline. Only purpose. At the center of the ship stood the human commander. She was tall, calm, her eyes sharp like blades. Her name was whispered by enemies who never lived long enough to repeat it. To her crew, she was simply captain. She looked over the maps glowing on the holotable. Red dots, Imperial fleets. Blue lines, trade routes. Every move was calculated. Every attack chosen with care. "Target confirmed," she said softly. The crew moved instantly without question. Engines roared to life. Weapons charged. The warship turned toward its next prey. In the outskirts of a quiet system, an Imperial convoy traveled. Dozens of supply ships guarded by a few escorts. The convoy commander yawned in his chair, bored. Nothing ever happened here. Then the alarm screamed. "Unknown contact," the sensor officer shouted. "Where?" the commander demanded. Before he could finish, the black shape appeared out of the void. "The human ship! Raise shields!" the commander shouted. "Signal for help!" But there was no time. The human vessel fired once. A blast of energy cut through the lead escort like it was made of paper. Another shot tore a supply ship in half. Panic filled the convoy. "Scatter! Scatter!" the commander screamed. Ships tried to flee in every direction, but the human warship hunted them like prey. Every shot found its target. Every strike was final. Within minutes, the convoy was gone. Not a single ship survived. The human warship vanished into the dark once more, leaving only silence. Back on the capital world, the reports reached the Emperor. More fleets destroyed, more systems lost. The senators grew desperate. "Why do we not crush them?" They cried. "Why do we not burn their worlds? Why do we not show them the power of the Empire?" But the Emperor did not answer their rage. He simply watched. Behind his mask, his mind turned. The general spoke once more. His voice was like stone. "Majesty, the longer we wait, the more they will strike. This human commander is no fool. She is cutting us apart piece by piece. You must take this seriously," the Emperor finally spoke. "And I do. The question is not how to kill her ship. The question is why she fights. What do the humans want?" The chamber fell silent. None could answer. Meanwhile, in the human warship, the captain stood before her crew. The battle with the convoy had ended quickly, but she did not smile. She looked at her officers with a calm, steady gaze. "We are not here for glory," she said. "We are not here for conquest. We are here for survival." The Empire thought humans weak. The Empire thought we could be slaves or dust. Now they will learn the truth. Her voice was cold, but every word burned in the hearts of her crew. "We are not the hunters," she said. "We are the storm." The warship drifted into the void once more, silent, waiting, watching, ready to strike again. Across the galaxy, fear spread faster than light. In the markets, merchants whispered about the human ghost ship. In barracks, soldiers trembled at the thought of facing it. On quiet worlds, children spoke the name of the human commander as if she were a legend. And in the dark halls of the Empire, the golden mask of the Emperor gleamed as he whispered a single word: interesting. The Empire was vast, stretching across countless stars. Yet fear had begun to spread through it like a disease. No matter how strong their fleets, no matter how secure their borders, there was one shadow they could not fight: a single human warship. Merchants whispered of it in secret. Soldiers muttered about it in their bunks. Some said it was cursed, others claimed it was a machine of the gods. Many refused to even speak of it, fearing the ship would somehow hear their words and come for them next. The Empire, once a symbol of power, was beginning to tremble. On a mining colony at the edge of space, life was quiet and harsh. Workers toiled under red suns, digging metal from the ground for the Empire's endless war machines. The miners were used to silence. Only the crack of drills and the hum of machines filled their days. But on one such day, the silence was broken. The colony's skies grew dark, not from clouds, but from the shadow of a massive shape sliding across the horizon. The people looked up and terror filled their hearts. It was the human warship. It hovered above the colony like a predator, silent and still. No weapons fired. No words came. It simply watched. For hours it remained in the sky, its black hull reflecting the faint red light of the suns. The miners fell to their knees praying. Some begged for mercy. Others whispered in awe. And then, as silently as it came, the warship turned and drifted back into the stars, leaving the colony untouched. The Empire soon heard of this event, and it frightened them more than the battles. "She didn't destroy them," one senator muttered. "She let them live. Why?" The general's answer was grim. "Because fear is stronger than fire. Every miner will tell their children, and their children will tell their own. Soon the galaxy itself will spread her legend. The human does not need to fight every battle. She only needs to let the Empire fear the next one." In the throne chamber, the Emperor listened in silence. His golden mask reflected the firelight as he tapped one finger against his throne. His council begged for answers. "Majesty, the people are losing faith. Our fleets no longer obey with courage. They hesitate. Even the governors whisper rebellion." The Emperor finally spoke. His voice was calm but sharp as a blade. "Then it is time. If fear is her weapon, we shall turn it against her. The galaxy must see that she is not untouchable. He turned to the general. Bring her to me, alive. The general bowed. And if that is not possible? The golden mask gleamed. Then burn her ship until there is nothing left to bury. Far across the stars, inside the human warship, the captain stood in her private chamber. Through the glass walls, endless starlight spilled across her face. She watched it quietly, her expression calm, though her mind was heavy. She remembered Earth, a blue world so small compared to the Empire, yet so full of spirit. She remembered the day the Empire came, demanding submission. She remembered the chains they tried to place on her people, and she remembered the screams, "Never again." That vow had carried her across every battle, every fire, and yet she knew the danger was growing. The Emperor would not remain patient forever. The door behind her opened. One of her officers, young but loyal, stepped in. "Captain," he said, his voice steady but tight with worry, "our scouts report movement. A massive fleet is gathering, bigger than anything we've seen." She turned her gaze toward him, her icy eyes sharp. "How many?" The officer swallowed. "Hundreds, Captain. Maybe more." For a moment, silence filled the room. The stars beyond seemed to pause. Then the captain smiled. It was not the smile of joy, but of iron resolve. "Good," she said. "Let them come." The Imperial fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Hundreds of warships moved as one, a tide of firepower so vast it could erase entire systems. Their hulls gleamed with banners of gold and crimson. Their weapons pulsed with power. At their center, a massive flagship, larger than any city, a fortress of steel and flame, led the way. On its bridge stood the general, his hands resting behind his back. His eyes burned with grim determination. "We will not underestimate them this time," he said. "Every ship will strike as one. Every weapon will fire at my command. We will tear the human warship apart." The officers around him nodded, though fear still lingered in their eyes. They had heard the stories too. They knew what one human ship had done to dozens, but now they had hundreds. Surely nothing could stand against that, surely. In the dark void between stars, the human warship waited, alone, silent. Its captain stood on the bridge, watching as sensors lit up with red. Hundreds of signals, an entire fleet bearing down on them. Her crew glanced at her nervously, waiting for orders. Some tightened their grips on their consoles. Others whispered silent prayers. The captain raised her hand, calm and steady. "Remember," she said, her voice like steel, "they think numbers make them strong. They think fear makes us weak, but they are wrong. We are not fighting for power. We are not fighting for conquest. We are fighting for something they cannot understand." Her eyes blazed as she spoke. "We fight for freedom. And freedom does not fear." The crew answered with silence, but it was the silence of faith. Every man and woman on that bridge was ready. Ready to stand. Ready to fight. Ready to die if they must. The captain gave her final command. "Prepare the storm." The void trembled as engines roared. The human warship, small compared to the Titanic fleet, turned slowly to face them all, alone, outnumbered, outgunned, but unbroken. And as the Imperial fleet closed in, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, because everyone knew. Whatever happened next, the stars would remember. The void was silent. A single human warship faced the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. Hundreds of Imperial vessels stretched across the stars, their hulls glowing with crimson banners and golden lights. It looked like a wall of steel, endless and unbreakable. At the heart of it, the massive Imperial flagship burned like a star, its cannons ready, its crew prepared to erase one human ship from history. Yet that one ship did not retreat. It stood alone, silent, steady, like a shadow carved into the night. On the human bridge, the crew waited in silence. Their hands hovered over controls, hearts beating faster with every passing second. They had seen the reports. This was no ordinary battle. This was the Empire's answer, its fury made into fire and steel. But their captain did not tremble. She stood tall at the center, eyes fixed on the glowing swarm of enemy ships. Her voice was calm like still water. "They want fear," she said softly. "We give them fire," she raised her hand. "Engage." The human warship came alive. Engines roared, shields flared, weapons hummed with power. Then, in a flash, it vanished. 1 second it was there. The next it was gone. Where is it? The Imperial officers shouted on their bridges. Track it! Their scanners searched, but the human ship was faster, quieter, deadlier than anything they had ever faced. It slipped between their ships like a phantom, unseen until it struck. The first blast came from behind. An Imperial destroyer erupted in fire, split in two. Seconds later, another ship exploded, then another. The human warship reappeared, its guns blazing. On the Imperial flagship, the general gripped the railing, his jaw tight. "Do not break formation," he barked. "Tighten the net. Force it into the center." The Imperial fleet moved as one, walls of steel closing in, thousands of guns aiming at a single point. The human warship seemed trapped. Nowhere to run. Fire! The general roared. The stars lit up as hundreds of cannons unleashed their fury. Beams of light crossed the void. Missiles streaked. Explosions shook the darkness. The human warship vanished again. The Imperial shots tore into empty space. Then the ship reappeared above them, raining destruction. It was like watching lightning dance across the stars. The human vessel moved with impossible speed, striking, disappearing, striking again. Imperial cruisers fell one by one, their explosions lighting the dark. But the Empire was not weak. Their numbers were overwhelming. Every time the human ship destroyed one, 10 more turned to fire back. On the human bridge, alarms blared. Shields flared under heavy fire. Sparks rained from panels. Crew members shouted, their voices tight with urgency. "Shields at 60%. Port side hit. Damage in Sector 3. The captain's eyes burned, but her voice stayed calm. "Hold steady," she said. "This storm belongs to us." The battle raged on. The void was no longer silent, but alive with fire. Ships exploded like dying stars. Broken hulls drifted across space. Screams of soldiers echoed across comms before fading into static. Yet the human ship still fought. It cut through lines, weaving between giant cruisers, blasting engines, tearing weapons apart. Every strike was precise, like a blade cutting flesh. Still, the Empire pressed harder. Their flagship unleashed waves of energy that shook even the mighty human vessel. On the bridge, the crew staggered as the ship rocked. Consoles sparked. Smoke filled the air. "We cannot take another hit like that," one officer shouted. The captain's voice sliced through the chaos. "We will not take another hit. We end this now." On the Imperial flagship, the general's eyes widened as the human warship turned, directly toward them. "She's coming for us," an officer whispered. "Prepare defenses." The general barked, "All power to shields." The massive ship shifted, its weapons glowing like a sun ready to burn. Dozens of escort ships moved to shield it, forming a wall around the flagship. But the human vessel did not slow. It darted forward, weaving through the wall of ships, tearing holes through them with ruthless fire. Escort after escort exploded, their wreckage spinning into the void. The general gripped the railing tighter, his teeth clenched. "Hold. She cannot break us." But deep inside, fear had taken root. The human warship burst through the last line of escorts. Now nothing stood between it and the Imperial flagship. Inside the bridge, the captain's eyes blazed like fire. "Target acquired," her weapons officer said. "Fire," she commanded. The warship unleashed its fury. Beams of energy ripped across the void, slamming into the flagship's shields. Sparks flared. Alarms screamed. The massive vessel trembled under the onslaught. The general shouted, "Return fire! All guns!" The flagship fired everything. Missiles, cannons, beams. The void turned white with fury. The human warship twisted, dodged, its hull glowing under the strain. Its shields flared, its engines screamed. Yet it pressed forward, closer and closer. On the human bridge, the captain whispered one word. Now, the warship unleashed its strongest weapon, a blast so bright it lit the galaxy. The flagship's shields cracked, shattered, and then broke. The beam tore through the flagship's hull, ripping across its length. Explosions erupted. Fire devoured steel. The Emperor's Pride, the largest warship in history, screamed as it began to die. The general staggered as the bridge shook violently. Flames roared behind him. Officers screamed. Consoles exploded. He fell to his knees but lifted his head. Through the chaos, he looked at the human warship. For the first time, he understood. This was not just a ship, it was a symbol. A message. The Empire was not untouchable. With his last breath, the general whispered, "Pray." The flagship exploded in a storm of fire. The void fell silent once more. Wreckage floated across the stars. Hundreds of Imperial ships destroyed, their greatest flagship gone. And through the fire, the human warship drifted forward, scarred but alive. On its bridge, the crew sat in silence, their eyes wide with exhaustion, disbelief, and awe. The captain stood tall, her expression calm. She looked at the burning remains of the Empire's pride, and she spoke words that would echo across the galaxy. Let them remember this night. The battlefield was silent now. Where once the stars blazed with cannon fire and explosions, only wreckage drifted. Broken hulls turned slowly in the void, fragments of ships that had once carried thousands. Fires still flickered inside shattered vessels, their light fading into nothing. The greatest fleet the Empire had ever assembled was gone. And yet, through the ashes, one ship remained. The human warship floated forward. Scarred, blackened, its shields nearly broken. But it was alive. Against impossible odds, it had survived. Inside the bridge, the crew sat in silence. Some stared at the screens in disbelief. Others held their heads in their hands, shaking from exhaustion. A few whispered prayers, giving thanks simply to still be breathing. The captain stood at the center, her face calm, though her body bore the weight of the battle. Her eyes swept across the ruined fleet, the wreckage of the Empire's pride. "Status," she asked quietly. One officer checked his console, his hands trembling. "Shields at 8%. Hull damage severe. Engines unstable," another spoke, her voice hoarse. "Casualties." "Minimal, Captain. We held together." The captain nodded slowly. Her voice was steady, but a small fire burned beneath her calm tone. "Good. Then we continue." News of the battle spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, every system, every colony, every outpost heard the same story. A single human warship had faced the full might of the Empire's fleet, and the human ship had won. On distant mining worlds, workers stopped their drills and whispered the tale. On merchant ships, crews raised cups in silent respect. In rebel camps hidden among asteroids, cheers broke out, voices rising in hope for the first time in years. Even inside the Empire's own cities, people spoke in secret. They whispered of the human captain, the ghost ship that defied 1,000 guns. And with each whisper, the Empire's shadow grew weaker. But in the throne chamber of the capital, the silence was different. The Emperor sat on his black throne, his golden mask glowing faintly in the firelight. Around him, senators trembled. The great general was dead, the flagship destroyed, hundreds of ships lost. No one dared speak until finally a senator broke the silence. His voice shook as he said, "Majesty, the people demand answers. The governors demand safety. They ask if the Empire is still strong." The Emperor's mask turned toward him slowly. Behind the golden face, no emotion showed. "The Empire does not fall," he said coldly. "Not from one battle, not from one ship." Another senator stepped forward, bolder now. "But Majesty, the people—" "Enough," the Emperor snapped. His voice cut the air like a blade. "Fear is a disease, and diseases must be cut out." He leaned forward, his golden mask glowing. "Find the human, find her ship, and burn every world that dares whisper her name." Meanwhile, in the void between stars, the human crew worked in silence. Repairs were slow. The warship bore deep scars. Its armor was cracked, its systems strained. But it still lived. The captain walked among her crew, her steps calm, her gaze sharp. She stopped beside a young officer who was patching wires with shaking hands. "You did well," she said quietly. The officer looked up, surprised. "We almost died, Captain." The captain's eyes softened, if only for a moment. "Almost. But we didn't. Remember this, survival itself is victory." The officer nodded, her fear replaced by resolve. That night, if night could be measured in the endless dark of space, the crew gathered in the mess hall. They ate in silence at first, the weight of the battle still heavy. But slowly voices began to rise. One spoke of how the Imperial ships panicked. Another laughed about how close they'd come to being crushed. Soon the silence broke, replaced by quiet laughter, stories, even songs. The human warship was more than a vessel. It was a family. And that family had faced the storm and endured. At the far end of the hall, the captain watched them. She did not smile, but her heart carried a quiet pride. These were not soldiers fighting for conquest. These were humans fighting for freedom, and freedom was winning. But freedom came with a price. On a distant world, the Empire struck back. A small colony whispered too loudly of the human victory. They celebrated in the streets, raising banners in secret. The Emperor's fleet arrived days later. The colony burned. The Empire made sure the galaxy saw the fire, hoping fear would drown out the whispers of hope, yet, instead of silence, the story spread even faster. People did not speak of the colony's fall. They spoke of why it was destroyed. Because it had believed in the human ship. The Empire's cruelty only fed the legend. Back aboard the warship, the captain received word of the burning colony. She stood on the bridge, her face unreadable as the report ended. Her crew looked at her, waiting for orders. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she spoke, her voice low but burning with iron. They think fire will silence us. They think fear will break us. But they do not understand. She turned, her eyes blazing like stars. They only make us stronger. For every colony they burn, 10 more will rise. For every world they crush, 100 voices will shout louder. The Empire cannot kill hope. Not anymore. The stars stretched before them, endless and dark. The warship's engines rumbled, scarred but strong. The captain raised her hand, her voice steady. Set a course. The fight is not over. The storm is just beginning. The crew answered with silence once more, but it was not fear. It was belief. The human warship turned into the void, its scarred hull glowing faintly in the starlight. And across the galaxy, billions of hearts carried the same thought. The Empire could burn, could crush, could kill. But it could never stop what had begun. The shadows of fear now belonged not to the humans, but to the Empire itself. The human warship drifted silently through the stars, a scarred giant that refused to die. Its hull still bore the black marks of battle. Its engines groaned with every jump, yet it moved forward with purpose. To the galaxy, it was no longer just a ship. It was a symbol. Everywhere it went, whispers followed. Whispers that grew into stories, and stories that grew into fire. On the mining world of Horus III, workers gathered in dark tunnels, passing a stolen recording of the human victory. They watched in silence as the warship tore through the Empire's fleet. One miner raised his fist, his face lit by the flickering holoscreen. "If they can fight, so can we," he said. Another nodded. "The Empire bleeds, and if it bleeds, it can fall." The tunnels filled with murmurs, and for the first time the workers did not feel like slaves. They felt like soldiers waiting for a call. On a distant trading moon, smugglers raised a toast to the humans. They had long hated the Empire's endless taxes and blockades. Now, with proof that the Empire could be defeated, they found courage. "Smuggling guns is one thing," a scar-faced smuggler said, lifting his drink. "But fighting back? That's real business." Laughter rose around the table, but it was not the laughter of jest. It was the laughter of men and women ready to join a storm. Even inside the Empire's core, the fire spread. In the hidden back rooms of taverns, senators, servants, and imperial officers whispered what their masters feared. They spoke of the human ship, the ghost that tore apart 1,000 vessels. Some dared to hope. Others dared to dream. Hope was dangerous. But it was alive. Back aboard the human warship, the captain stood at the command table. The crew gathered around her, tired but focused. The ship's scars were still unhealed, but the galaxy itself seemed to call to them. The captain's eyes swept over her people. "The Empire thinks we are a single ship. They are wrong." Her voice was steady, but it carried the weight of iron. "We are not a ship. We are the spark, and sparks start fires." A murmur of agreement spread across the room. Some clenched their fists. Others sat taller, their fear replaced by determination. The captain tapped the map at the center of the table. Red markers glowed, worlds under Imperial control. Blue flickers appeared in between, planets that whispered rebellion. The fire is spreading. Our victory gave them courage. Now they look to us for more. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "We cannot fight every battle, but we can choose where to strike. And when we strike, the galaxy will listen. The first strike came sooner than anyone expected. On a frontier world called Drenas, the Empire cracked down hard. Soldiers marched in the streets, silencing voices that dared to speak of the human warship. The people were beaten, their homes burned. The message was clear: hope would not be tolerated. But on the horizon, the human ship arrived. It fell from the sky like a shadow of vengeance, its engines blazing blue. Imperial soldiers looked up in shock as the blackened warship descended. The ground shook with its landing. The captain walked out with her crew, armored and unbroken. She said no words at first. She only stood, her presence a promise of defiance. The crowd, beaten and tired, stared at her. For a moment, silence ruled. Then a child pointed and shouted, "It's her! The human ship!" The crowd roared. The sound shook the streets, a storm of voices rising. The Empire's soldiers tried to silence them, but they were drowned by the fury of a people who had remembered what it meant to fight. And for the first time in centuries, an Imperial garrison fled before unarmed civilians. Word of Drenas spread faster than the Empire could contain it. What began as whispers now became shouts. Entire cities painted the symbol of the human warship on their walls. Rebellions lit across the stars like sparks falling into dry fields. The Empire struck back, burning colonies, silencing planets. But the more they burned, the more the galaxy turned against them. In the throne chamber, the Emperor raged. His golden mask glowed in the torchlight, but even behind its brilliance, his fury could not hide his fear. "They rally to her," he roared, his voice echoing through the marble walls. "A single ship, a single human dares to defy my empire." A general bowed low, trembling. "Majesty, the fleets are spread thin. Every system reports uprisings. If we chase the human ship, the rebellion grows. If we crush the rebellion, the human ship strikes elsewhere." The Emperor's hand clenched into a fist. For the first time in his reign, the unshakable ruler felt the taste of uncertainty. "Then we will break her," he hissed. "Not with fleets, not with fire, with fear. We will turn her legend against her." Back aboard the warship, the captain watched the stars in silence. Reports of uprisings filled her screens. Victories and losses both carried the same truth. The galaxy was no longer silent. A crew member approached quietly. "Captain, what if the Empire sends everything at us? What if they find us?" The captain did not turn. Her eyes stayed on the endless dark of space. "Then we fight," she said simply. The crew member hesitated. "And if we fall?" The captain finally turned, her gaze steady, her voice sharp as steel. "Then we become the flame. A flame does not die when it falls. It spreads." The human warship moved forward again, scarred but unbroken, carrying with it the weight of 1,000 worlds' hopes. And across the stars, rebellion spread like wildfire. The galaxy had lived in the shadow of fear for too long. Now, the shadow belonged to the Empire, because one human ship had shown them that the impossible could be done, and the rising flame could not be stopped. The stars above were quiet, too quiet. Space seemed to hold its breath as the human warship drifted alone through the void. Its hull was scarred, its weapons drained, and its crew weary. Yet its spirit burned brighter than ever. They all knew it. The Empire was coming. Not a patrol, not a small fleet. Everything. The captain stood at the viewing deck, her eyes fixed on the horizon of stars. Around her, the crew whispered, worked, and waited. They had faced countless battles, but this was different. This would be the end, one way or another. Far across the galaxy, the Emperor gave the order. 1,000 ships left their ports. 1,000 more followed. The Empire gathered the largest fleet it had ever commanded. Destroyers, dreadnoughts, carriers, the sky itself would be filled with fire. "They will drown her in shadows," the Emperor declared, his golden mask glowing. "And when the last light of her ship dies, hope will die with it." But even he felt a trace of doubt. For every report from his generals told the same story. Rebellion spread faster than fire. And the human ship was the spark. The day came. The human warship drifted into the unmarked sector known as the Hollow Expanse. The void stretched endlessly with no stars, no planets, only silence, and then the silence broke. One by one, red markers appeared on the scanners. Dozens, hundreds, thousands. The Empire's fleet had arrived. The crew gasped, their faces pale as the sky outside filled with steel. Warships blackened the void, blotting out the stars. The largest fleet in history gathered for one purpose: to erase them. For a moment, silence ruled inside the ship. Then the captain spoke. Her voice was calm, steady, and sharp. "They think this is the end. They think fear wins today. But they are wrong." Her eyes moved across her crew one by one. "We are not fighting to survive. We are fighting so the galaxy knows the Empire can be broken. Even if this is our last battle, it will not be forgotten." A murmur spread. Fear was still there, but beneath it, something stronger stirred. Defiance. The first shots came like thunder. Beams of fire tore across the void, lighting the human ship in bursts of flame. Shields cracked, the hull groaned, alarms screamed. Direct hit to port side. An officer shouted, "Engines at 70%! Another yelled, but the captain did not flinch. "Return fire," she ordered. The human warship roared back. Its cannons lit the void with blue fire, tearing through the first wave of destroyers. Explosions rippled like stars being born, and for a moment the impossible seemed real again. But the Empire's fleet was endless. Wave after wave crashed down. Missiles struck, beams sliced, and the human warship shook under the weight of 1,000 enemies. Inside, smoke filled the corridors. Crew members rushed to seal breaches, shouting orders through the chaos. Sparks rained from broken consoles. The ship was bleeding. "Captain!" A voice cracked through the comms. "We can't take much more." The captain's jaw tightened. She looked at the endless swarm of ships outside. And then she smiled, cold, sharp, unshaken. "Then we don't take it," she said. "We give it." She ordered the warship forward, straight into the heart of the Imperial fleet. The crew gasped, but they followed. Engines roared. The ship surged ahead, weaving through the storm of fire. Cannons blazed, tearing open cruisers left and right. The human ship was a spear of light, stabbing into the darkness. But the cost was heavy. The hull cracked further. Entire decks fell silent. Each victory left a scar, but the ship pressed on. At the command deck of the Emperor's flagship, the golden-masked ruler watched with fury. "One ship," he snarled. "One ship defies me still." His general trembled. "Majesty, it is not just a ship. It is a symbol." The rebels rallied to it. Every moment it fights, more join their cause. The Emperor slammed his fist against the table. "Then end it. End it now." But the captain had her own ending planned. As the ship reached the heart of the Imperial fleet, she gave the order no one expected. "Prepare the core." Her crew turned to her in shock. "Captain, if we overload the core, the ship..." She cut them off with a look. "The ship dies, but the Empire dies with it." A silence fell, and then one by one the crew nodded. They understood. This was more than survival. This was sacrifice. The warship's engines blazed brighter than ever, pushing it deeper into the fleet. Imperial ships scrambled to block it, but the human ship tore through them like a beast unleashed. Inside the engine room, alarms screamed as the core began to overload. Lights flickered, panels melted. But the crew held their ground. "Core at 90%, an officer called. On the viewing deck, the captain stood tall, her eyes fixed on the Emperor's flagship in the distance. "This is for every world you burned," she whispered. "For every voice you silenced." The core reached its peak. The human warship shone with blinding light, brighter than any star, brighter than the fleets around it. And then it exploded. The blast tore through the void like the wrath of a sun. Imperial ships disintegrated in the firestorm. Entire fleets vanished in seconds. Even the Emperor's flagship cracked under the force, its golden throne swallowed by the inferno. The hollow expanse was no longer silent. It burned with the light of freedom. When the fire faded, nothing remained of the human ship. Only wreckage scattered among the stars. But across the galaxy, the story spread. They called it the final storm. The night one ship faced an empire and won. Rebellions erupted in full, sweeping across star systems like waves. Worlds rose, chains broke, and the Empire's grip shattered. The Emperor's golden throne was empty. His voice silenced forever, and in the hearts of every rebel, one truth burned eternal. It began with a single human ship,